Of course, the market is fully anticipating rate cuts next week. If you go and look at the Fed Watch tool from the CME, seeing what the market's pricing in regarding probability of a rate cut, it's standing at near 100% chance of a rate cut at next week's meeting. And there is actually a growing chance of actually that double cut, like I said. Several things later on this week that will certainly make this chart move one way or another. We have several very key inflation reports too. Wednesday, we're getting a PPI inflation report from August. And then on Thursday, we're getting the CPI inflation report from August as well. And, of course, those two data points that are going to be, key factors and, the Fed helping them make their decision. Of course, after Jackson Hole, we got, a bit of a, signaling of a pivot from Powell that, the Fed was starting to put more concern, on the labor market and the economy as opposed to, inflation being the greater threat. So, it seems like the Fed's trying to pivot and they're, ready to start cutting rates. But, perhaps, while the market is, fully anticipating cut, it seems now the question is what's the size of that cut going to be? So that's really the key of what those two inflation reports later this week, will be really important for. Of course, if you see those reports continue to come in higher, see inflation continuing to tick up, of course, that puts the Fed kind of in a tough spot, right? If those come in hot, you're starting to get hotter inflation reports. Also, labor reports that are signaling a slowing jobs market as well. So kind of a tough spot. They have to figure out what is the greater risk. It seems that it's still the labor market, and they're going to be opting for rate cuts, but perhaps it could be a smaller cut if those reports come in hot. So something to be watching for later on this week.